And welcome back. You are listening to Linda Pinizzato here at the Hayes FM, the condo expert. The idea behind the show, as you know, is to provide condominium information. And if I haven't said it already, is, as you may know, I've been a realtor now for over 33 years. I started in the industry in 1979 and very successful. I actually was at my awards banquet last week. I'm with Sutton Group Quantum here on Lakeshore in Mississauga. And there are so many changing times that are going on in condominiums. And I have to say, sometimes, why did I get involved in all of this? Because you know what? I'm selling the product. I mean, I'm selling houses as well, no question. My clientele goes from one end of the first-time home buyer stream all the way up to the seniors that are now downsizing. So it's been wonderful to have the support and the basically the confidence, the support and the confidence of people out there that have contacted me and allowed me to be a party of their decisions and their families and their future. And, of course, their past for people I've been involved in over the years. So I want to do a shout out. I really want to tell everybody I appreciate it, and I just think it's wonderful. And that's why I want to go one step further. I don't want to be the typical realtor out there. I want to learn things that I can now teach you as well. So whether we know each other or not, that's okay. The bottom line is I would love to see the Condo Owners Association be recognized by the 1.3 million condo owners in this province. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by helping each other. So last week I sent through a shout out on Facebook, and I was wonderful. It was wonderful to see the tweets that went around, because all of a sudden it slam-basted into Twitter. And then from there it went into, of course, our Facebook page has got all these likes. So if you could help us out, go into the Facebook Condo Owners Association, throw out those likes for us. Let's get it moving. I would really sincerely appreciate that. So I talked about the city in its sole discretion to take a cash payment of the $1.3 million in lieu of the housing unit. So basically what we've done now is that the city has more money in Section 37. I believe they already have $60 million in Section 37. So what is the intent? I mean, are they intending to take this now and build up that fund more and more and build affordable housing buildings out there? I'd love to know exactly what the intent of Section 37 is, because honestly, every time I read something on Section 37, it seems to be building up a kitty larger with more and more money in the Trinity Spadina area under Councillor Vaughan. Yet I see very limited things happening within that community other than more condominiums being built. So I'm finding that I would have to say, believe it or not, about 50, maybe 55% of the complaints that we're getting right now have to do with Adam Vaughan's Trinity Spadina Ward 20 and concerns about what he is doing over there as the councillor and why, in fact, he's not paying more attention to the community. So this was very disappointing. I think that the negative turnaround of the, so now you're going to provide a disclosure that may not be a disclosure, and then they have the ability to change all these things. But of course, that would be within 2 years of execution of Section 37 agreement. But I think if you take a look at the timelines here, the people that bought into the building, now the information they got when they purchased, if in fact they get this information, isn't correct, because the city has the ability now to make more changes. So I'm not sure if that's a comfort level. I think that once the decision is made and the decision is put in writing and the 500 and change units that are sold in there, and they're sold under that pretense that this is what's going to happen, and they accepted that, is where it should be. I don't really understand why the city then would have the ability to make changes, because we're talking about 598 residential units in a 49-story mixed-use building. So maybe they're not going to be happy with the city's decision. So if they're not, and it wasn't what they bought under the same, grounds of the approval of what was actually passed, how can that be fair to the people that just purchased? So it goes on to talk about different, I'm not going to go into the entire thing, but, the bottom line is that, we've got totally different structures that are going on. And that's why I'm making this comment. That's why I'm even talking about this. It's almost like someone's gone to sleep and they had a dream, and they wake up in the morning and they remember part of their dream. They come up with a whole new great idea, grand scheme, and they've decided now they're going to step forward and try some other method. But somewhere along the way, it seems to be internally known within our municipalities, but it's the general public that doesn't really seem to know a whole lot about this. Did you know that at least 10% of the total number of dwellings to be constructed on the lot shall contain 3 bedrooms or more in compliance with the provisions of the Ontario Building Code? And there is a submission of a wind study as part of the related application and an implementation of any wind mitigation measures. So that's good. I mean, I think that that's extremely important. I mean, no question. As we get higher and higher with high density in these condominiums, not just, as far as the numbers of units, but also on the height. Because, I mean, at one time we had a huge height restriction. So it looks like the height restrictions no longer exist. So as we get higher, certainly, I think people, especially those that are buying on the higher floors, should be concerned with whether or not there's a wind study as part of the application. But now, has that wind study ever been put on paper? I know for a fact that if you buy a residential house and you're backing onto or any proximity of our Toronto International Airport, it has to be right in the agreement of purchase and sale. It itemizes as a matter of fact. I think it also goes down to railways. CN, CR rail, whichever tracks. It also has special type of comments on there if you're related to, say you're backing onto hydrofields. So if you've, maybe even now they might have wind turbines, for all I know. They could be putting that into new construction in areas where wind turbines are being erected. I think another one is cell towers. But I don't think that there's any mandates or regulations on cell towers. I think that on the Communications Act has a life of its own, but I'd have to check into that for another show. But the interesting part about this is that, think about that for a moment. If there is a wind study, wouldn't you like to be privy to it? Maybe you don't want to sit down and read it, but maybe you just want it. Maybe you want to at least know that it went down, and at least you know that it was made, and one night when you're sitting by yourself in front of the fireplace, you decide that you're going to take a look at this and say, okay, what exactly was this all about? The bottom line here is that, again, we're talking about information awareness. Did anybody really know that wind studies are being put together, or that they're actually having a study in relation to these high-rise condominiums? I think that's good information to know. So that's on the table right now. And what it's done, it's opened up an overview. Now, if you're living in any other city in the province, you could pretty much have the same kind of a template in something that could be brand new construction. And ideally, you have now some questions because you've listened to the condo expert on the Hayes FM. Or you've taken the time to look up coatoronto.com or .ca. And you can look up different applications under condo review on the right-hand side. And as we get these sent to us, we will certainly be putting them online. So this will be the location that you can go to find out most of the materials that will help you to make informed decisions, or even help you obtain more knowledge. So the interesting part about this is that there's also another entity called, there will be a private shared driveway between the subject property and the heritage property to the immediate north. So if it's a private shared driveway, the question that I'm going to have here is, who's doing the snow removal? And is that monitored? So what about if people start parking in the driveway? Does that mean that the parking attendants can't stop and monitor that driveway? Because if it's private sources. So I gather the ownership of it will be shared between the two parties, and the expenses will be shared between the parties. So what I see in this kind of a complex is what's called as a reciprocal agreement between all parties concerned. And that will outline who's paying what. So I think that, and what percentage of the payment, and, they'll dictate the floor area space here, or the ground area space of that driveway. So I'm looking at this as I'm speaking to you. So I think that the interesting part about it is that, you know, it's not the typical single story, like single multi-story condominium building. It's more complex. So there's an awful lot of complex condominium developments going on out there. And it became a very, very common trend, and a lot because they want to share expenses on amenities. And when it was a trend, it became between residential buildings. But now we've got the different entities. So it's no longer just residential buildings, it's also got the commercial blend. So I think that, and then to be honest with you, there's also one other side of it. You could very well, you have a commercial blend, but it could be in the form of hotels. No different from Trump Towers, for instance. So, you know, when you're buying into those kind of projects, it's not the straightforward situation. So you really need to take a look, and if you don't understand all this, by all means, and this is very important, if you do walk into these, or better yet, call me before you walk into them, Linda, or email me, linda@lindapinizzato.com, and I will go in with you and I will represent you and I will make sure that you know all of this information before you sign on that dotted line. Because that's called proper representation, and that's transparency. And, you know, unfortunately, when you're going into these building sites, those sales representatives are not representing the buyers. They are representing the builder. You're walking into the builder's site with the builder's plans, with the builder's drawings, with the builder's, you know, guidelines and, you know, condo documents. There is absolutely nothing in there for the buyer other than the product. So once you sign on the bottom line, you've bought the product. But you've also bought the restrictions, regulations, paperwork, designs, everything relating to the product. And that's what you need to know. So you do have a 10-day cooling off period. If people out there aren't aware of it, you do have a 10-day cooling off period. So the idea behind that is to then take these documents, and I can come with you to your lawyers so that we can then, or he can or she can, review them so that you have a clear understanding. And if you want to make any changes or you want to go back and have discussions before it becomes a firm purchase, you have the ability to do that with professional advice backing you. Now, you know, if you've spent this kind of money, again, you know, it's no different. How many of you out there, like, think about it, how many of you out there have not gone shopping and you say you want to, you know, purchase a new dishwasher or stove or fridge or whatever, appliances, whatever the case may be? You do. I mean, I'd be extremely surprised if you don't ask the question, how much warranty do I have? And if I decide that I want extended warranty, how much money is it going to cost me? You do ask the question. And that's on a, what, $1,500 fridge? When you're talking about probably a minimum $350,000 condominium. So I think the fact that you're stepping forward, you know, the wonderful things about condominium living, you know, and there's cute things too. I mean, there's awesome, like so many awesome things. Like I know the condominium, I'm president of the board, one of the condominiums in downtown Toronto, right at Blue Jays and Wellington. And I have been for the last, since 2012 actually, or 2002, not 2012. Since 2002, right from day one, as a matter of fact. And, you know, at Christmas time, we have a wonderful Christmas holiday season party. And it's actually two buildings together. And recently there was a board change, which I was very, very happy about in the other building. So the board of directors in that building now actually are doing an excellent job. And the interesting part about it is that, you know, with the past president, we got together, we worked really hard, and we presented a beautiful venue with hors d'oeuvres and a glass of wine, red, white. It was lovely, and it was a beautiful venue for the owners. Sometimes you get so busy with your work that you don't spend time to even know the people on your own floor. So it's really nice to have social events within these communities in the condominiums. And in our building, what we do is that we have it, you know, every Christmas. And sometimes during the year, we try to have it a second time. And we have barbecues upstairs on the rooftop. So especially with the summer season ahead, you know, and people wanting to get out there a little bit more, we, you know, I think that there's a lot of things that we can arrange. And condominiums should be arranging on the social scene. So, on the social scene and not being kind of cooped up in suburbia with your house and coming through and being able, especially if you're a young adult and you're in an area where it's open to, maybe the entertainment district or restaurants or shopping centers, you have very much of a different lifestyle. And you can't have that lifestyle living in a house. I mean, unless you're living, I guess there is downtown core areas where you could have that. But generally speaking, if you decide then to move to suburbia, there's not really, it is relatively within walking distance to some degree, but most of the time, it's a very different atmosphere living in a condominium community of condominiums, not necessarily just your single building, but say you're in a community with a whole bunch of community condominiums around you. There's a very different atmosphere. So, there's nothing wrong. It's a great way to enjoy your life, and it's a great way to have ownership, and especially with the interest rates being incredibly low. Did you know that if you have a mortgage payment of, for instance, $1,700 a month, I'm not talking about maintenance fee, just even if you come in with very little down and you have a mortgage payment of $1,700, or even I can make, which really would equate to the cost of renting say a 2-bedroom condominium here in Mississauga, or even $1,800, or in some are as much as $19, depending on the square footage. But did you realize that mortgage payment, interesting enough, with the low interest rates of only 2.7 or 2.8, 3%, you can lock in fantastic rates right now, even for 5 years, that almost half of your mortgage payment is paying down the value of your home. So in fact, if you are paying $1,700, then you've got to look at that and say, wow, $850 a month is coming off my principal. So I'm actually paying down my mortgage for $850 a month. So, ownership, and I've endorsed it since 1979, is a good thing. And we will talk more about it. You're listening to Linda Pinizzato on the Hayes FM, and I will be right back. Please stay tuned.